the creator of machines extolled by the poet Walt Whitman. America's artists had to define themselves against the central myth of industrial culture, whether they liked it or not. The central experience of American culture after the Civil War was realism. It was the shift from nature to technology, from the country to the city, from the farm to the factory or the lab. Art's curiosity about the range of human activity grew. Its metaphors were science and journalism, and it used the camera. And you can see all this at work in America's greatest realist painter, Thomas Eakins. Eakins was the ultimate realist, devoted at the expense of popularity to his rigorous project of seeing and measuring and recording the modern world. He wanted to be objective, as declarative as a camera. As honest as the scientists whom his portraits celebrated. Eakins studied anatomy at Jefferson Medical College in Philadelphia. This led to the greatest of his scientific portraits, done in 1875, the Gross Clinic. Dr. Samuel David Gross was famous for his surgical innovations, a medical celebrity and, in Eakins' eyes, a hero of empirical thought. It has its ancestors. The most famous of them is Rembrandt's painting of Dr. Tulp dissecting a corpse. But you can't identify with the corpse, and Eakins more dramatically shows an operation on a live patient under ether, documenting a particular moment at which they're cutting out a fistula of the thigh. The incision, brightly lit, is one focus of the picture. The hands converge on it, the instruments, the gazes of the assistant surgeons, and even, in a brilliant touch, the parting of that surgeon's hair. The other focus is Dr. Gross himself, with his head like Beethoven and shiny blood on his hand. Eakins did so many studies of him that Gross wished he would drop dead. But they paid off in that firm, square-planed face which personifies unflinching reason, thoughtful skill, the attributes that Eakins most admired. Eakins worked in Philadelphia all his life, bringing to his own country the teaching methods he had learnt as a student in Paris.
This looks fine. It seems to me, from your standing, you have almost a head-on view of that pelvis, right. So that this is inappropriate to have that much side plane showing. There is, in fact, lean forward as
Eakins combined it with photography, which he saw not as a rival to painting, but an essential tool in the kit of the realist. He made sequential photographs to analyze physical action. He used the camera to study the body at rest. Eakins' frankness did not go over well in Quaker Philadelphia. In fact, it was scandalous. In 1886, he was fired from the Pennsylvania Academy for removing the loincloth from a male model in a class that included female students. He never recovered from this blow. But he kept right on painting his great Greek theme, the vigorous body exactly seen and placed in real space. His core image of this was rowing, Philadelphia's big new urban sport. Schuylkill River runs through the city and its banks are still dotted with rowing clubs. Eakins loved it. Here he is in early September 1874 in his own painting. That's him in the scull in the background, rowing away. In the foreground is his friend Max Schmidt, a champion oarsman. Everything in the scene, down to the railroad bridges and the timekeepers in their red skiff far away, has been meticulously studied in advance, recreated in the studio from drawings and models. And yet the painting is so unified by light that it seems all of one piece, one moment of vision, from the distant feathers of cloud to the weariness in Schmidt's powerful shoulders. Serious, positive, democratic, and filled with a sense of progress. That was America for Eakins. It was how many Americans saw their country. Its symbol had been Abraham Lincoln. But, as it turned out, there had also been more sinister figures in the America that Lincoln personified. And one of them was an actor who, in a quite literal way, played his last scene in this theatre. The night before his climactic performance, a friend advised him to quit acting. "When I leave the stage," he replied, "I will be the most famous man in America." And he became the first in a line of American celebrity assassins. For on the night of the 14th of April, 1865, John Wilkes Booth entered Box 7 of Ford's Theatre in Washington and fired one shot from a .44 caliber Derringer into the back of the skull of Abraham Lincoln. When John Kennedy was shot, America was flung into mourning and confusion. When Lincoln was shot a century earlier, the same happened, perhaps worse, and through the disorientation ran a strain of elegy, of mourning, of nostalgia for the past, a public emotion that Americans, proud of their newness, had scarcely felt before. The image of the martyred Lincoln recurs in the paintings of John F. Peto. Peto was the best of a whole school of still life artists who pleased their American audience with eye-fooling tricks and played on a mood of nostalgia. His images are booby-trapped with meaning. They're full of small-scale violence and decay. Nothing is whole or new. Envelopes are torn, texts and tickets have been ripped away, and the strings and tapes of old-time letter rack are coming apart. An old rusty Bowie knife that might have come from a Civil War battlefield hangs over a torn photo of Lincoln like the sword of Damocles. It is hiding, or cutting off, the word head on the card below it, which originally read head of the house. In another Lincoln painting, his photo shares the old board with a roughly carved Star of David, suggesting the lost Moses whose people now may never fulfill the Puritans' hope of a promised land in America. In 1865, the year the war ended and Lincoln was killed, Winslow Homer painted this picture, A Veteran in a New Field. It's more than an agricultural scene. In popular speech, battlegrounds were compared to cornfields, death to a reaper, men to wheat. Now, in the new field, a returned veteran reaps the harvest of peace, and behind it is the great text from Isaiah, "And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into scythes. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they study war any more." Homer covered the war as an illustrator. After it,